So it is increasingly obvious now, um, that April 2nd, we are probably going to witness the real start of, like, this trade war. Like, I don't think you've seen anything yet. But bear in mind, Trump randomly turned around and just said, "Oh, what? You dare re-tariff us? Well, I'm going to re-tariff you 200%, France, on wine, beer, and champagne." And we'll be covering that as well in a bit. However, um, one of the things I often talked about in the run up to the election was how excited I was that we actually had a serious government, because they were taking seriously things like having, an economic plan, an industrial strategy. And that was kind of exciting because we have not actually had an industrial strategy going all the way back to like the beginning of the last Labour government. And they followed through on that industrial strategy. We haven't had one like since like 97, 98. So it's been a long time since we've had one. But of course, um, if you don't know, this industrial strategy has now been pushed back, just as the defense review has also been pushed back. I can't help but wonder why in all this. I think it's pretty obvious why. I also said before in the run up to this that they needed to Trump proof themselves. They needed to prepare basically what happens if Trump gets in. And I think we are now seeing that. And I think, unfortunately, it seems to come across as a bit of a scramble, because I don't think even they could have predicted how bad, how wild and wacky Trump is being at the moment. Because yeah, it's even worse than the first administration. And of course, as you've seen, the American stock market just going down and down and down. If there is a recession, bear in mind, as we've always said, recently in America, it will affect the rest of the world. Maganomics is coming. So now we really have to look to our own industries, and see how we can try and not only like recession proof them, but prepare for a potential recession, prepare for recovery from that potential recession. All this stuff we have to now think, because Trump is just acting like the very definition of a bull in a china shop, just doing whatever the hell he wants. It's wild, but there you go. Um, and like I say, April 2nd, if you want anything from America, get it now. Get it now while you can, because I have a feeling suddenly, well, it might become very much more expensive. So, like I say, April 2nd, if you want anything from America now, get it while you can. So, before we do dive more into this, about the UK steel industry, indeed, like I say, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Of course, there is the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link, there's the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, thank you very much for everyone who does help and support the channel. So, let's crack on then into this, because I think this is a very, very important on this, especially now that we are basically seeing, you know, this is just the beginning of the Trump trade war. I think we're going to look back on maybe on 6 months time and just think, how did we end up in this? How have we had a recession? And like I say, it's all because Trump is acting like an absolute lunatic, in this case. But of course, in here, we are looking, of course, steel, very energy intensive. So if energy goes up, then so does to the cost of making steel. And it is very, very important that we have a good steel industry, because guess what? Most of our building stuff and things like that, for defense, other stuff we do in the economy, guess what? Comes from steel. So it is very, very important that you do have a local steel building industry, or at least a local steel making, shall we say, industry. Does it sort of feeds a lot of the other economic stuff. So the British Steel has called for an energy cap and at least prices now for the heavy industries in order now to try and match France and Germany as it now grapples with the fallout of Donald Trump's trade war. UK Steel, the lobby group, has proposed to the government and now to set a maximum price for energy through now a contract for a difference, or the CDF, before the announcement now of a new steel strategy. Britain's steelmakers and other industrial energy users have now long been united in namely the high energy prices is now a key factor disadvantaging UK operations. This has been going on for quite some time. Energy prices not just having an effect on you and I. It's our big energy. It's our big heavy industry as well. So this should be something absolutely we should move on. Absolutely move on at this moment. So UK Steel figures currently suggest producers are now facing electricity costs now up to 50% higher than those of course France and Germany. Although analysis by the consultancy firm from Barnier said that UK companies will now pay about £68 a megawatt hour for electricity this year, compared with France at 44 or even £52 in Germany. So instantly, as you can see, it's more expensive to make steel compared to in France or in Germany. We have to put a cap on this. And if you put a cap on heavy industries, then there is no reason why you cannot put a cap on domestic supply as well. So this is something we should definitely be looking at in this. The steel industry is also now lobbying for help in its other battles against now the global glut in supply, most of course notably from China, and of course the impact of Trump's trade war. The US president imposed a 25% tariffs on producers of steel and aluminium in a now move to try and force companies to manufacture in the US. Liam Bates, the president of the Long Products and Markagenia Stainless, now in Sheffield, said that energy is, of course, the biggest area. You need to have a good energy supply and a competitive energy pricing. At this time, when there is a struggle, it would help. And of course, as always, it is energy. So we need to really take care of this energy. And I think a price cap to help heavy industries, absolutely. And then if you've put a price cap on them, why not everyone else? Especially when you are seeing energy companies with record profits across the board on that one. The industry has, of course, blamed the UK's higher prices on the heavy reliance now on gas-fired power generation and the limited use of the subsea cables, which would have given access now to cheaper foreign electricity, and of course, lower subsidies than rivals. Under the CDF, the government had said it would pay an energy-intensive industrial users the difference if prices, of course, rose above a set level. While the companies would pay back the difference if the prices fell below it, the selling of the price now at a similar level to France would cost about 17 pence a megawatt, or £51 million annually between 2026 to 2030, Barnier said. Although, of course, this cost would increase if, of course, producers set up shop in the UK. So this is something that, again, we should be very, very, very much looking at as well. Not only energy caps, but subsidies. We should be looking at how we can subsidize our industries, because this is how you bring back manufacturing. You don't put tariffs up, because guess what? Tariffs is not how you bring back manufacturing. That's not how you do it, as Trump will find out very quickly. But you give subsidies. You give subsidies, and you put them and you do them in a sensible way that attracts the businesses to there. We saw this for the past couple of years from the CHIPS Act, from the Inflation Reduction Act. That was pulling a lot of companies away from not only just the UK, but the rest of Europe as well. But now Trump has blown up those. That's not happening so much anymore. So, we should be thinking about subsidies on this and what other stuff we can do to help really stimulate, especially our heavy industries here in the UK. So the industry obviously argued that the mechanism would give now much needed clarity. That it would make it now much easier for companies now to invest in the UK. However, it is still unclear whether the government would, of course, support a policy that would now see it liable for big costs if global gas markets were, of course, to increase. Labour is now also promised in its election manifesto to try and drive down industrial electricity energy costs. Frank Alsloff, the UK Steel Director of Energy and Climate Change Policy, said the British steel industry is now at a severe competitive disadvantage due to now its long-term electricity costs. The UK is the outlier, as European competitors now benefit from government wholesale price mechanisms that shield them now from higher price powers. The UK government has a 2.5 billion fund to invest in the steel industry, a pledge that has so far survived the plans now for steep cuts in other parts of the budget. The fund was established as a way now to upgrade the industry for the transition to net zero steel, including switching now from polluting blast furnaces to much cleaner electric arc furnaces. And again, I'm still glad that is going ahead. We do need to do that transition to net zero steel. That will take some time, though. As I've said this before, will take about 25 to 30 years or so to do that. The only other country that is really in the process of doing that at the moment is us and Sweden. Now, other countries are also in the process of starting that transition as well. They haven't yet kickstarted it, but they will be soon. So eventually, we will all be producing net zero steel. But the first country to start making net zero steel, well, it will be a massive advantage. And if we fall behind in that, it'll be very, very bad indeed. So back to this. Some, of course, top executives have said that the government would, of course, be very much better off spending it on lower electricity prices rather than, of course, making direct bets on technology. Some UK steelmakers want the government to impose now safeguards now to tariffs to prevent trade diversion caused by Trump's levies. And of course, I now I have deep sympathy if you are working in the civil service and you are in the trade department. Oh boy, I bet your past couple of months have not been very very quiet. I can guarantee you that. But yeah, it is something we should be looking at and seeing how that we can do and what we can do, because that is important, and especially continuing on that transition to net zero. Because again, if we can do that, that will be a massive benefit to our country, and in that way as well. So this is something we can do and we should do. But of course, as always, the big thing is, money talks. You've got to have the shinies to sort of, pay the piper to start playing the tune. If you don't, well, no upgrades, nothing will get done. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but make no mistake, you will probably see a lot more calls. I think a lot more calls from different industry sectors, not only from here in the UK, but certainly Europe as well, calling now for protections against Trump's tariffs or things like that. You will see this immediately happen, and especially after April 2nd, I guarantee you now, a lot of companies are battening down the hatches, preparing, because April 2nd, get ready. Yeah, might be a very busy day for news on that one. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.